This is part 2 of Killers Before Dead by Daylight and their disturbing laws. We hit 10 likes in the last video, and I said if we do that, I'll do part 2, and I'm a man of my word. I am new to YouTube. I do appreciate any feedback and likes and subscribes. I appreciate all that stuff, but don't act like yo ain't enjoying this. Don't act like I ain't crushing it. As long as your parents don't blame me for you jumping in their bed at 4 AM scared, I'm just a messenger. Grab your blankets, grab your popcorn. This is going to be a crazy ride. Some of these killers are low-key freaky, bruh. Anyway, enjoy, and any feedback would be appreciated. GG. The story of the Huntress. As soon as Anna was able to walk, her mother started teaching her how to survive a harsh, solitary life in the northern woods. Living in such an extremely remote and dangerous area required skill and resilience. When sunlight became too dim for productive activities, they would take refuge in their house, a sturdy old cabin constructed to resist the toughest winters. Anna would rest in her mother's arms, surrounded by the few wooden toys and masks that she had crafted for her. Drifting off to sleep with stories and lullabies, she dreamt happy dreams, ignorant of the events that would soon change everything. Anna and her mother were stalking a great elk through the woods. They knew it was dangerous prey, but it had been a particularly difficult winter and they were almost out of food. The spectre of starvation frightened them more than any forest creature. Without warning, the elk reared, bellowed, and charged at Anna. She was paralyzed with fear as the whole world seemed to shake. The elk was close enough for Anna to see the murderous fury in its eyes. When her mother threw herself in its path, axe in hand, a blood-curdling scream escaped from her lips as the elk impaled her up on its antlers and hoisted her up into the air. The elk was close enough for Anna to see the murderous fury in its eyes. With all her strength, she brought her axe down on its head again and again. While it tried to shake her loose, with a sickening crack the antlers snapped and Anna's mother was free. The beast collapsed. Anna was too small to move her mother's broken body, so she sat with her in the clearing where she had fallen. To distract her from the dying elk's cries, Anna's mother held and hummed her favourite lullaby. They stayed like that, the Huntress and the elk getting quieter and colder, until Anna was alone in the silent forest. Eventually she stood up and started the long walk back home. Still a child, she knew just enough about life in the frozen forest to survive. She followed her instincts and became one with the wild. She got older and stronger and practiced her hunt. As she grew into a dangerous predator, her humanity became a half-remembered dream. She widened her territory and lived off her hunts. She worked her way up through squirrels, hares, minks. Eventually she grew tired of them and hunted more dangerous animals, like wolves and bears. When unsuspecting travelers came through her woods, she discovered her new favorite prey, humans. Unlucky souls who strayed into her territory were slaughtered like any other animal. She liked to collect their tools and colourful garments, and especially toys where there were little ones, but she could never bring herself to kill the little girls. Girls she would take back to her house deep in the woods. They were precious, and looking at them woke up something deep in her heart. She craved the closeness of a loved one, a child of her own. Among the wooden toys, dolls, and storybooks she couldn't read, the girls would be tied by the neck with a rough and chafing rope fastened firmly to the wall. She couldn't let them wander off, or they would surely die outside. Every time the girls would waste away and die of cold or starvation or sickness. Every time it plunged Anna deeper into pain and sorrow and madness. She was compelled to try again, and started raiding the nearest villages to slaughter families and kidnap their daughters. She wore one of the animal masks her mother crafted for her so many years earlier to try to calm the frightened children. Villagers spread the legend of a half-beast lurking in Red Forest, the Huntress, who killed men and ate little girls. War eventually came to the forest. German soldiers began to pass through, on the march to attack the collapsing Russian Empire. During these dark times, there were no more travellers. The villagers had abandoned their homes, and no more little ones to be found, only soldiers. Many of them were found with violent axe wounds. Whole groups disappeared mysteriously. Once the war was over, the rumours of the Huntress disappeared with it, engulfed by the Red Forest. The story of the Doctor. Showing exceptional aptitude in psychology, Herman was handpicked for special training in advanced neuroscience program located in a secret black site facility in Illinois, known as Larry's Memorial Institute, really a front for the CIA. This is where Herman met Dr. Otto Stamper, where, under his guidance, Herman began to use strange and ever increasingly vicious methods to extract information from prisoners sent to the Institute, which was also a convert prison and a re-education center for whoever was the USA's current nemesis. His liberal use of violent electroshock therapy revealed dramatic results and had turned to horrible and bizarre torture. Patients and prisoners were found dead or in vegetable states with all types of head trauma. In his office, they found the most terrible discovery of all, Dr. Stamper himself, his head peeled open, an array of electrodes and sensors inserted into his still working but annihilated brain. There was no sign of Herman the Dr. Carter, but his research paper suggested that he had been using the prisoners as part of an awful ECT experiments as he searched for the panacea of mind control. Over the years, Herman became known as the Doctor. No one ever questioned if he had held a medical certificate or even what happened to the prisoners after they had given up their information. It was only after Larry's Memorial Institute went silent for a week that the true horror was finally discovered. Patients and prisoners were all found dead with all types of head trauma. All prisoners' bodies were accounted for, including Dr. Stamper, but no sign of Herman the Dr. Carter. The story of the Hag. Lisa Sherwood grew up in a quiet village, mainly isolated from the rest of civilization. The people of the hamlet were kind and the elders kept old traditions alive, often keeping the peace by personally settling the ever-rare disputes. Lisa was particularly fond of the charms they taught her to draw for safety and good fortune. One night, as she was walking home through the woods, a terrible storm struck without warning. Howling winds whipped at her hair as she stumbled through the swamp, her rain-drenched dress plastered to her skin. In the slick, wet mud, she lost her footing, falling backwards and striking her head against a rock, slipping in and out of consciousness. She strained to identify the dark shapes approaching her from between the trees. That's the last thing she could remember. Her kidnappers kept her chained to the wall in a flooded cellar, though dimly lit. She could see others whose large open wounds swarmed with flies. It took merely a day before they returned, carving chunks from the prisoners' bodies with rusted blades, consuming their very flesh down to the bone. Most she saw did not survive long. Once the cannibals targeted them, but somehow, deep within, Lisa persisted. She pulled hard, the metal tearing through her skin and muscle until she was free. Her flesh oozed vicious yellow pus and bones were visible beneath her wounds. She could go no further. Delirious, she thought of home, she thought of the elders. Her dying breath, she wrote the symbol they had taught her into the floor using what remained of her fingers. Almost in response, a dark hunger stirred inside her. It yearned for blood. In oath, she chose vengeance. Villagers' search party eventually brought them to an old shack in a swamp. Inside, its previous inhabitants had been viciously dismembered and devoured by an unidentifiable animal. In the cellar, rotting corpse and disconnected flesh, the elder's charms were scrawled in blood on the floor. Lisa's body was not among the bodies and was never found. The village was never the same again.